It's time to talk sports. It's Hacksaw's Headlines, a panorama of the world of sports, stories, comments, and opinions. Now, here's iconic sports talk show host Lee Hacksaw Hamilton and co-host John Riley.
From the DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center studios in San Diego, we welcome you to our Monday bonus podcast, Road Trip, Baby. This will be different. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, along with my co-host, John Riley, and we are doing a double remote today. I am based in Oregon. John Riley is based in Ireland. We will see if we can pull this off in the next half hour. Our podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers, 9 locations in San Diego to serve you, and by North County Eye Centers of Poway and Escondido. When you need help, direction, treatment for your eyes, think North County Eye Center, Poway and Escondido. We didn't know if we could pull this off. We're doing a 2-continent Monday bonus podcast. I'm in the great Pacific Northwest in Oregon. Sir Riley is visiting his homeland. He is outside of Dublin, Ireland. John, good afternoon. I can't believe we've hit the floor running. We'll see if we can get this done.
Yeah, I think it's all going to work out great. Actually, we're in Kinsale, Ireland right now, which is in County Cork, down in the southern part of Ireland. And it's been terrific here. We've had a great time. And how's everything going on in Oregon for you, Lee?
Pacific Northwest is beautiful at this time, although it was really hot. I enjoyed your picture postcard that you texted me. John Riley spent an afternoon atop the Guinness Brewery in downtown Dublin, so he is ready for this podcast. John, we got a ton of topics on the table, some good, some bad. We're going to try to go a lot of different directions. Because we're doing this double remote, we're not going to be able to do fans forum when we get to the end of the show today. We hope to have it ramped up possibly by Thursday. And of course, we're going to be doing this double remote for the next couple of weeks because John has gone back to see his family in Ireland. John, let's talk about topics on the table. You want to talk baseball to start? Go ahead, pick a topic.
Yeah, we got to talk about the Padres and the Dodgers. That was a great series over the weekend.
Great because the Padres established themselves as not being timid towards the Dodgers. Great because they won 2 of 3. Great because they won another series against Los Angeles. The Padres are now 5-3 against the Dodgers this season. And you track back, Michael King and Tyler Glasnow put on a pitching performance for the ages on Friday night, John. Combined 21 strikeouts. It was absolutely phenomenal. And the stadium was packed. Michael King struck out 8 of the first 9 Dodgers that he faced. Go think about that. This is a Dodger team that had a team batting average of 270, hit 54 home runs, was bombing everybody. And Michael King fans 8 of the first 9 that he retired. Glasnow, the ace of the staff, he was not to be denied either, John. He turned around. He whiffed 4 of the first 6. When they were done, King had 11 strikeouts. Glasnow had 10, 21 strikeouts between them in 7 innings. That was just phenomenal. Then we got to Saturday. After the Padres had won 2-1 on Friday, here comes Teo Hernandez. Grand slam home run for the Dodgers. Vintage Dodger baseball. They shut the Padres out on Saturday. All-time record, 46,000 plus for a game at Petco Park. And then Sunday, speaking of vintage, Yu Darvish, 7 shutout innings. Padres blanked the Dodgers 4-0. Tough day for Walker Buehler, his second start since coming off the disabled list after 23 months. He gave up back-to-back home runs along the way. They're not alarmed. It's just part of the process. So in the big picture of things, John, I just thought it was a phenomenal weekend of baseball for the fans. The Padre fans were crazy. Dodger fans bought a lot of tickets. They might have overwhelmed the Padre fans on Saturday. Padres returned favor and won again on Sunday. And the Padres establish an all-time record, 133,700 plus for the 3-game series. It was just an amazing weekend of baseball. And John, it was like a playoff atmosphere. It was electric. It was loud. They booed, they cheered, signs everywhere. You either wore Padre brown and gold or you wore Dodger blue. It was quite an atmosphere And these two teams, John, are going to do this 7 more times this season. How unbelievable is that? Your turn.
My turn. Well, we got here in Ireland on Friday, and my wife and I were whacked out on jet lag. And we ended up being awake in the middle of the night at 2:40 a.m. local time, and we were able to listen to the Padre game on MLB.com. We were streaming it. And what an exciting game. I mean, just all those strikeouts, and then Luis Ariz with that big hit in the 9th inning. I mean, I wish I was there. And then on Sunday's game, since it was a day game at 1 p.m., it was 9 p.m. here. So we were able to stream the game and watch it during semi-normal hours. And just a thrilling game. And the pitching over this entire series was just unbelievable.
It was pennant race baseball, and it's only the month of May. And like I said, they're going to meet 7 more times this season. So there was a lot of enjoyment there at Petco Park. There was a downer of a couple of stories in Major League Baseball, and it all kind of swirled around Petco Park too there, John.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Sean Burroughs and Barry Axelrod. I remember Burroughs when he was coming up, when Petco Park opened.
Sean Burroughs was the number 1 draft pick of Kevin Towers, power-hitting third baseman out of Long Beach. Had about 3 or 4 years in which there were great expectations for Sean Burroughs, and it didn't work out. Most people of the opinion, you're going to play in the hot corner, you got to be a power hitter. He was not a power hitter. He struggled. He became a singles hitter. He became very frustrated. He just did not have an eventful 4 years. And the Padres finally gave up on him. They traded him to Tampa Bay. His career kind of spiraled after that. Didn't play well there, got released, went to Seattle. He got released there. What complicated it all was there were a lot of issues were going on with him personally in terms of being a party guy, and alcohol became substance abuse, became chemicals, became a dependency, became an addiction, and his life crashed. He lost his fire. He didn't want to play the game anymore, and he was out of baseball really, really quickly. It was a terrible story. He finally woke up after living almost like a homeless person, having lost his family and lost his money, and decided, this is not me. And he got into rehab with some help of people from Major League Baseball, including Kevin Towers, the late general manager. And he rallied his career and his life, and he came home, and he resurrected his career. He dropped dead at age 43 of a heart attack in the parking lot, getting ready to go to a Little League baseball game. He died watching his son playing. Terrible story. But, there's so many positives about the comeback of Sean Burroughs as a person. He saved his life, and people in baseball helped him. Kevin Towers walked him through the whole sobriety situation. It was really, really a special give back to the kid. Dies at age 43. Then the next day, we get the notification about Barry Axelrod passing. He was a very free-spirited player agent. He had a unique and very different philosophy. I want to win in negotiations with a club, but I want my general manager I'm negotiating with to win at the same time. And they worked a lot of deals. Kevin Towers, Barry Axelrod, he represented a whole number of Padre players. Barry had been sick recently, passed away at the age of 77, cut from a really different cloth. And it's interesting that I've heard the stories about how he and Kevin Towers in negotiating contracts would scream and yell at each other at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and then go out for dinner and have wine or spend vacation time together. And it was Barry Axelrod, the agent, that was with Kevin Towers every step of the way as Kevin fought his own battle back from cancer, which obviously took his life at a very young age. Very unique relationship. As I said, Kevin Towers' nickname was the Gunslinger. Barry Axelrod was Quick Draw McGraw. Really, really special people. So as great as the Padres-Dodgers series was, there was a terrible tinge of sadness because of the passing of Sean Burroughs and because of the passing of Barry Axelrod.
Yeah, I just remember Burroughs being the hype, prospect, having been the Little League World Series guy, and we were so excited to have him. And I remember they had to move Phil Nevin from third to first, and Nevin wasn't happy about that, but they were planning for the future, and we had all of our hopes in this kid. And then, he was just sort of a punch and Judy singles hitter. But I read the article in the San Diego Union Tribune about his struggles when he was going through the drug addiction and the homelessness and like living out of a dumpster bin. And I didn't realize the severity of the problem that he had. So what a heroic way to come back, have a child. And it's something kind of interesting how he passed away at a Little League field where he had his greatest success.
Yeah, and it was amazing that Kevin Towers walked the road with him to get him into rehab and through all that. And in terms of Axelrod, we deal with all kinds of agents in the media, some good guys, some bad guys, some friendly guys, some guys are just hostile towards the media. He was really different. I enjoyed him. He did a great job for his clients, but he was one of the most unique people that he wasn't out to screw the general manager out of a contract. He wanted it to be win-win for both. And he was interesting. At the end of his career, he stepped out of the agentry business and he went to work for the Arizona Diamondbacks, who Kevin Towers was the general manager with. And they wound up finishing their baseball careers as kind of a joint front office team. And then out of the goodness of his heart, Axelrod was with Kevin Towers every step of the way as Kevin fought the losing fight against cancer. Hellacious story. Really good guy.
Well, besides Nevin, I mean, what were the other players that he represented?
Oh, my goodness. A whole wide variety. Off the top of my head, Nevin was probably the biggest star of all, but there were pitchers. I think there were some infielders along the way. I think Nevin was really the marquee guy. And Barry didn't represent a lot of guys nationally around baseball. He represented a lot of West Coast guys.
Well, I think it's terrific the way that relationship, with Towers and Axelrod, and then Towers with both, and that it was all like guys that appreciated it, loved each other, of the negotiation table.
Yeah, exactly. So we go from baseball. Next topic on the table involves the NFL, and that involves a passing of a name everybody recognizes.
Yeah, A.J. Smith. I remember him as the general manager. Tough guy.
Passed away at the age of 75 after a couple of years fight with cancer. He inherited a pretty good football team when John Butler, the former general manager of the Chargers, who would replace Bobby Beathard, John Butler passed away suddenly from lung cancer. A.J. Smith had been his right-hand man. They had been together in Buffalo. They'd been together in the USFL in Chicago. And he inherited a decent team that John Butler was just starting to put into place. Remember, at the end of the Bobby Beathard era, the Chargers went 1-15. That was the era of Ryan Leaf. So John Butler had a lot to clean up, and then he passed away. So suddenly A.J. Smith took over, and A.J. Smith did not have a good season the first year, but it got him a high draft pick. And then, of course, he drafted Eli Manning. Manning refused to come to San Diego. He turned around on draft day and traded Eli to the New York Giants in a package of deals that brought him Phillip Rivers, amongst other players. He founded Antonio Gates. He discovered Vincent Jackson. He drafted Eric Weddle. And so they wrapped all those guys around LaDainian Tomlinson, and that became a really good football team. Other guys that he brought in, Sean Merriman, Nate Kading. I mean, they were really good people. At the end of the day, he stockpiled an enormous amount of talent, starting with what he was given from John Butler, and obviously the marquee name was the Hall of Famer LaDainian Tomlinson. But think about this. He drafted a quarterback, Phillip Rivers, that broke all the passing records, over 59,000 yards, 397 touchdowns. He drafted a basketball player who had never played college football, and years later, Antonio Gates had 955 career receptions. He did a lot of good things, but they never won the big game, and that was the biggest issue of all. And of course, at the height of his popularity, he became really hard to deal with from a media standpoint. And he became very tough to deal with, I think, from a player and agent standpoint. And he fired Marty Schottenheimer, which is maybe one of the really worst moves that the Spanos family ever signed off on. After Marty had just gone 14-2, he hired Norv Turner, a career great offensive coordinator, but a substandard head coach. He brought him in. Norv won for a couple of years with Marty's players, but they never got there. And getting there, you're in this business to get to the Super Bowl, and A.J. Smith never did. So for all the positives he did in terms of player personnel, John, he really failed at his job with all the gifts that he was given and the players that he came upon. It turned out to be a really disappointing end to his run. He never held a job of responsibility again in the NFL after what happened with the Schottenheimer situation. I think a lot of people held that against him. So he had a great run here, But I think for the most part, if you were to go out in the street this afternoon and ask anybody in San Diego and mention A.J. Smith, they'd probably talk about a lot of negatives, and most of that swirled around the Super Bowl failures of not getting there, and then obviously what he did to a 200-win coach in Marty Schottenheimer. And all this is goes to the front door, too, of Dean Spanos, because Spanos did it again. He sided with the general manager, and they fired a 14-2 coach, like he sided with the general manager, Bobby Beathard, when they fired a Super Bowl coach in Bobby Ross. And then, of course, they moved the team to Los Angeles. So we think about, I have very mixed emotions about A.J. Smith. I think as a football guy, he was probably kind of neat to be around because he knew how to find talent. But as a person, I didn't think the relationships were very good, right, especially right at the bitter end. John?
Well, besides all the things that you just mentioned, the one other thing I remember about A.J. Smith is that he had a relationship with Kevin Acee when he was the beat writer for the Chargers. And it seemed that Acee had the inside scoop on getting information to share with the fans. But then other people thought that A.J. Smith was playing Kevin Acee as his tool to have him, let's just say, get the Charger speak, out in the market, that, it was kind of manipulative. I mean, what's your take on that?
Probably a little bit of both. Yeah. I mean, if you have an inside source, you develop that inside source. You hope you don't get used by that inside source. And that was probably a piece of the equation. I just don't think in San Diego, history will think fondly of A.J. Smith because of the failures to get to the Super Bowl. And then obviously the end result of what happened to Marty Ball. Hey, we get to halftime of our Monday bonus podcast. If you're just joining us, you're not going to believe this. We're doing a 2-continent podcast at this hour. I am in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon. He is outside Dublin, Ireland on vacation. Hacksaw and Sir Riley, we hope you're enjoying us. Our podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers. There are 9 locations to serve you. And we don't care what the project is that you've got to get done. When it comes time for materials, when it comes time for ideas, think DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers. 9 stores in San Diego to serve you. Podcast is also brought to you by North County Eye Centers of Poway and Escondido. We will all need help with our eyes. And when that time comes, whether it's a vision test or whether it's to deal with something much more significant, glasses, contact lenses, glaucoma, whatever it is, think North County Eye Center of Poway and Escondido. And a reminder, our Monday bonus podcast is coming to you from Oregon and from Ireland. This is kind of different, and we're keeping our fingers crossed we can get through this without anything happening. John, we won't be able to do Fans Forum today, but we do want to remind everybody about what we're doing with Hacksaw's Insiders Group. Just go ahead and describe how Fans Forum works and for the people who can join our team.
Okay, well, let's just talk about Hacksaw's Insiders Group, which is a great little thing. We're building a team, a community of people that love sports, love Hacksaw, want to talk Padres, Dodgers, NFL, NBA. The way you sign up is go to leehacksawhamilton.com. In the upper right corner is an orange box. Just fill it in. We send out emails of the best 15 minutes in sports, sometimes Lee's one man's opinion, and we might have some other things coming for you. So if you want to join, just go to leehacksawhamilton.com.
And a reminder, we normally do at the end Fans Forum, but because we're doing a 2-continent broadcast at this hour, We're not going to be able to do it today. We might be able to do it come Thursday. John, let's go to the second half, and we got hoops to talk about. And boy, there's a lot of topics on the table.
Yeah, hoops, NBA playoffs. I mean, what's happening here, Lee?
It's amazing. I mean, we're now marching into crunch time in the NBA playoffs. And here's the Minnesota Timberwolves series against the Denver Nuggets. Minnesota won twice in Denver. Looked like the Nuggets were done. They were down 0-2. They went to Minnesota, and despite Anthony Edwards going off for monster scoring nights, the Denver Nuggets beat the Minnesota Timberwolves 2 games in a row. Series is now tied 2-2, and now they're going back to Denver for Game 5. The big issue is Minnesota's big men have disappeared. It's really hard to believe. You looked at Denver, and Nikola Jokic, was really struggling, looked fatigued, looked like maybe there was an injury. And his support people, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter, were really hot and cold. That was in the 2 losses at home. They go to Minnesota, and the Timberwolves bigs totally disappear. So, boy, it's gut check time here for this situation. You know, the other night, Jokic had 35 points as they won the second game in a row on the Timberwolves' home floor. So you got that series. The other series involves a team that I thought was going to roll through the East, the New York Knickerbockers. Suddenly, they're not playing very well. They blew out Indiana in games 1 and 2 at Madison Square Garden. They then went to Indiana, and they got pummeled. They gave up 132 points in the second game. Pacers have now made it a shooter series. That series is tied 2-2, and the Knickerbockers have a bunch of nagging injuries, including Jalen Brunson, their big scoring guard, who's had a lot of 40-point games this season. Suddenly, he's hobbling. Some say it's his foot. Others say there's a groin injury. He's just not the same player, and suddenly the Knickerbockers are not competitive. Now, the series goes back to MSG for Game 5, so those two teams are really in serious trouble right now. John, it's been fascinating to watch these playoff series and how the emotional pendulum has kind of swung back and forth.
Yeah, I think the Knicks could certainly use Malachi Flynn right now, right? Coming off the bench. That poor kid, I mean, he's been kind of pushed aside in Toronto. He's proven it in Detroit. He would be a great asset for the Knicks.
Yeah. By the way, sidebar story, speaking of ex-Aztecs, somebody has to explain this story to me. Jaden Ledee was not invited to the NBA draft combine in Chicago that opened today. Invite to go play in the NBA G League camp in which scouts come in and look. He played there. He averaged 11 points, 5 rebounds a game, 15 minutes per game in the scrimmages that he played in. He did not get invited to go to the NBA camp. So the only thing I can see is he's just going to have to use his credentials and his video to sell somebody on signing him to a make-good contract to come in to somebody's NBA camp once the draft is completed. But I'm stunned. I mean, we're talking All-American here, second-team All-American. We're talking phenomenal Mountain West Conference Player of the Year type personality, dedicated kid. And at 6'9", 225, 230, I just don't understand why he's not getting more play and why now he's been bypassed twice by NBA scouts. And I don't buy the theory, well, Lee, he's 24. It does not matter. If he can play right now, he'll play right now, and he gets a contract and he comes in and proves himself at the NBA level. I mean, I'm just shocked when you consider Bronny James, who averaged 4 points a game at USC, is in the NBA draft camp. Lost his starting job, never got the job back at Southern Cal, and yet, because he's a legacy, he's in that camp. What I think this is so, what's the word? This is so unfair to Jaden Ledee that he's being treated this way by NBA scouts, NBA teams.
Yeah, I'm kind of perplexed by it as well. My instinct says, yeah, he's 24 because they want to draft 19 and 20-year-olds, so they have, some length of career in the NBA, but there is no way an NBA team is not going to want to sign Ledee as a free agent, after the draft. I mean, he's going to land somewhere because he's just such an obvious pick. But it is crazy that he, wasn't invited to the NBA Combine. The G League had their Combine, and they invited 5 players from that one up to the NBA Combine, and Ledee wasn't one of those names either. But Boogie Ellis was one.
I think the bottom line will be he's going to have to show the NBA teams what kind of player he is. Maybe he gets a post-camp draft invite as a walk-on free agent because they do bring in guys who are undrafted, and maybe he plays his way there, or maybe he plays his way onto an NBA G League contract because they will sign some free agents along the way. The alternative is go to the Euro League in Europe and play for a year there, and he's got agents, so maybe they'll take him abroad for the first year. But based on everything we saw with this young man, it's just hard to believe that. To me, there can be no justification why this type of talent is there. So we go from that topic to the other topic, which is actually the draft itself.
Yeah, the pick. I mean, did they do the lottery with with the balls bouncing around, Lee?
Yeah, and in Detroit, they're not real happy for the second year in a row, and Detroit's one of the worst run franchises in the league. John, they had the NBA draft lottery over the weekend. The Atlanta Hawks, who've got themselves a couple of really good young players, get the first pick in the draft. It's the first time Atlanta has ever won the draft lottery. So they draft one. Washington, which is coming off the all-time worst record in franchise history, they will get the second pick. Houston, which has stockpiled some really good young players, surprisingly jumps up. They're a non-playoff team. They jumped up. They wound up with the third pick, which is amazing. San Antonio, which got Victor Wembanyama last year, John, they're going to wind up picking fourth, and San Antonio also has the eighth pick. So they're going to get two really quality players in the draft, and then the fifth pick went to Detroit, and Detroit was miserable this past season, worst record in the league, but for the second year in a row, they went from being the worst team to only drafting number 5. So Detroit's not really happy with this scenario. San Antonio, as I said, is drafting 4 and 8. Portland, post Damian Lillard, is drafting 7 and 14. Washington's going to draft 2 and 26. And Utah is going to draft 10 and 24. Lakers have the 17th pick, although New Orleans has the right to claim that pick by virtue of a prior trade. Clippers do not have a number 1 pick. And this is a very strange year. This is not a year in which there are megastars at the top. The top 2 players, as we speak right now on our Monday podcast, John, top 2 players are both from France. Alex Sarr, a 7'1" center, and Zach Rashadin, a 6'8" shooting forward. They could go 1 and 2 in the draft. And it's weird. We came through March Madness. Nobody is talking about Zach Ertey of Purdue. So I don't even know at this point whether he's going to be a top 5 pick, despite all the things he did back-to-back years for the Boilermakers. John?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of people wondering about the big man from UConn as well and where he's going to land. But it just seems like the NBA GMs, they just have a different, they have a different vision of what kind of player they want that is not the same as what we see as fans of NCAA ball.
Well, we don't get to see a great deal of video on the players abroad, and that may be the reason for this inequity. I mean, we see the bigs at UConn and the bigs at Purdue, but those guys scout over there, and that EuroLeague is high-powered, and they got a lot of young bigs in the EuroLeague. That's why in the last couple of years, Wembanyama came out of nowhere, and Victor Wembanyama won Rookie of the Year, and he's going to lead San Antonio back. And how about that Spurs are going to be drafting 4th and 8th. So there is a select group of players who are abroad that NBA scouts are looking at. John, one other basketball topic.
Yeah, but before we get there, I just got a question about the draft. The one thing I always remember about the draft is when the Knicks got Patrick Ewing, and it was the frozen envelope in the bin. Do you buy that story, or is that just a conspiracy theory?
Oh, you're big on all types of conspiracy. I don't ask John anything about politics because everything is a conspiracy. But what John is making reference is when they had the envelopes, when the Patrick Ewing came out of Georgetown, this is the strangest thing. And I looked at it and said, who? And half the world looked at it and said, fix. What it was the corner of the envelope, John, was bent over like that. Oh. And people said, commissioner's reaching in the bin to pull out an envelope, and he pulls out the one that's got the bent thing, and the bent thing is the New York Knicks where the draft lottery was being held. So that was a storyline for an extended period of time. You're correct.
Yeah, so I think that's why they don't use the envelopes anymore, just to eliminate that possibility. Okay, let's go to the other basketball topic. I mean, the West Coast Conference making some moves.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. Nobody saw this coming at all, and there's a lot of heat and bounce back reaction to it. West Coast Conference, which worked out the deal with the collapse of the Pac-12 to bring in Oregon State and Washington State just as basketball members, has now added two more beyond the Cougars and the Beavers. They just added Grand Canyon University, based out of Phoenix, which has built itself into a really good Division I program. And they also added the University of Seattle up here in the Pacific Northwest. The Grand Canyon thing has really brought negative reaction. Grand Canyon is a, quote, for-profit university. When they started up their athletic programs, the university had a structure. It was for profit, which became, a lot of people said, oh, it's a diploma factory. You come in, you pay the money, and we'll give you the graduation certificate. They've tried to shed that image. They just got accepted into a pretty classy conference in the West Coast Conference. And now just think about this. When this thing rolls out in 2025, you'll still have Oregon State and Washington State. You'll have Gonzaga, you'll have St. Mary's, you have the University of San Francisco. And by the way, USD, struggling to put together its NIL package, is in that conference too. So it's going to be a wicked conference with the addition of Grand Canyon and the University of Seattle, plus the two refugees from the original Pac-12. It's going to be fun basketball, going to be good basketball.
Yeah, when I think of the WCC, I always think of all the Jesuit schools, right? You know, and the league that they've had forever. But this whole thing about Grand Canyon, just because they're for profit, that doesn't make them bad or evil. I mean, a lot of universities get huge money from donors that go into these foundations. You know, I think like Harvard and a lot of these other schools have hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in their foundations. So I don't know. I don't think it's a sin to have a for-profit school, even though that sounds kind of unusual in college sports. I mean, is it going to give Grand Canyon an advantage? I don't necessarily think so.
Well, if you're playing Gonzaga and St. Mary's and all that, that's pretty good to have on your calling card when you're going to recruit. So I think there is a bit of an advantage for conference membership rather than playing all these independent schools and having to go to Texas, etc. I can't believe that you would mention Jesuit schools and don't think it's sacrilegious that a for-profit university who can get athletes in the front door, academics notwithstanding, you're linking the Jesuit schools to Grand Canyon's past history. John, what are you doing?
I'm linking the Jesuit schools also to Oregon State and Washington State, who have huge athletic budgets, way more than St. Mary's or USD. So it's just the process of everything changing in college sports. Also, you know, since we've seen the Aztecs play at Grand Canyon and those fans go bananas there, in my opinion, that's a program that's deserving of having, you know, kind of a higher profile and a better conference, because the WHAC was just kind of silly.
Oh, I think the West Coast Conference is going to be a must-watch conference now when you add these four schools to what the Zags and St. Mary's and USF have become. And Steve Lavin, USD, he's got a lot of work to do to rally University of San Diego basketball. So that's the storylines on hoops today. John, last topic on the table, hockey.
Hockey, yeah, the playoffs are going, Lee. I bet you are all fired up. What's the latest story here, Lee?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things here as it relates to the NHL playoffs. And let's talk about the series that has captured the imagination of everybody across Canada. This Vancouver Canuck Edmonton Oilers series is just beyond description right now. We're talking about a unique set of circumstances where Vancouver punched Edmonton in the mouth and wound up beating them opening night. Then Vancouver lost the second game at home, and I think the general consensus, well, here comes Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. This series is over. Then they go to Edmonton for the two games there, series tied 1-1, and what happens? Edmonton blows them out in the third game, and then in the fourth game last night, Vancouver comes back and pulls off an unbelievable upset as their goaltender, Artis Siovs, makes 42 saves on the road, and Connor McDavid disappears. Absolutely stunning series So it's 2-2. Now they're going back to Vancouver. And if the Canucks win there, then it goes back to Edmonton for game 6. And then it has to go back to Vancouver if it is a game 7. I mean, this is amazing because Edmonton's and what's got all the star players and got the firepower, and Vancouver's just got a bunch of grinders, and they're doing this with a third-string goaltender, which is just a shocker. The other storyline as it relates to Edmonton, I don't know who they're going to have play in goal. They benched Stuart Skinner on Sunday, and I went back and did some checking. In this playoff series, NHL goaltenders, John, they can carry a team. NHL goaltenders in playoffs, if they have a save percentage of 9-10, that's phenomenal. Stuart Skinner's save percentage in this series against Vancouver is .793. He's fighting the puck. He's playing bad angles. He's not seeing shots. They benched him. And suddenly the guy who had played really well all season as the Oilers had a good campaign suddenly is really shaky. And I'm a big believer. I read body language of goaltenders, and I know when these guys are fighting the puck and when their confidence has started to erode. And they need Stuart Skinner, but they don't need Stuart Skinner with a .793 save percentage. So that's an amazing story. Meanwhile, the Kings and the Ducks, their seasons are over. Vote of confidence to LA Kings general manager Rob Blake. He will return next season. Burning question. What are they going to do with this roster where all these guys are making $8 and $9 million and a bunch of guys let them down? This was supposed to be the year they took the step forward in postseason. Rob Blake will retain his job. He can't trade Pierre-Luc Dubois, big money contract. He can't trade Kevin Fiala. Those two guys have been unbelievably disappointing. I don't know how the Kings are going to change the chemistry of their team. The Ducks, of course, have been in the massive rebuild. We just went through the NHL draft lottery. The Ducks are going to pick third. They're going to get themselves a huge defenseman, and they want bulk in front of their goaltender. The burning question with the Ducks between now and the NHL draft at the end of June, are they going to trade John Gibson, their perennial all-star goaltender, to stockpile more players or draft picks and just go with the San Diego goaltender that they really like, Luca Dostal, who played really well, so that bears watching. And then in Toronto last week, they fired Sheldon O'Keefe, the coach, after they got knocked out of the playoffs again in the first round. And Brendan Shanahan, the president of the team, went public and made the statement, we got rid of the coach, we made a coaching change, we're going to make some player changes. And they got a bunch of big money contracts too. I don't know if anybody wants a $10 million contract that John Tavares has, whether anybody would be willing to take on Mitch Marner's $10 million contract, which has only 1 more year to go. That is interesting. Need to keep that thing because evidently Shanahan is now threatening, we're going to change this. We're going to change this roster because this roster has let us down 3 straight years in a row in the first round. They've not won a first-round playoff series. These are the Maple Leafs. Have not won a first-round series in 20 years, which is absolutely stunning. And the last name is Joel Kenville. There are 5 NHL coaching jobs that are still opening. This guy has had tremendous success, Blackhawks, St. Louis Blues, Florida Panthers, a longtime NHL defenseman, held in high regard. It's almost as if he's being blackballed out of the league. About 5 years ago, there was an incident in Chicago where minor league players were brought up. And while they were with the team, skating as what they call black aces, they were practice players out of the American Hockey League. One of their players was sexually assaulted by a video coach. And evidently this went on for a while. Blackhawks didn't do anything about it from a discipline standpoint. Story was hidden in the closet until the player finally sued just a couple of years ago and won the suit. It cost the general manager the job. It cost Kenville his NHL job. He had long left Chicago and was down in Florida doing a good job there. And he's never been reinstated by the league. Toronto, I was told, wants to talk to him. He might be the best candidate out there, but he's not applied for readmittance because he doesn't think the NHL is going to readmit him. And evidently at the tail end of his Chicago thing, he indicated, we're in the playoffs. Don't bother me with anything else. I need to focus on the playoffs. When this story kind of swirled about the sexual assault of one of the young minor leaguers in the Chicago system while he was with the big club. To me, it's like Kenville's being blackballed out of the league, and they already fired the general manager. Scotty Bowman's son was the general manager there, so that's a really sleazy story. But all this has gone by, and Kenville can't get a job, which to me is shocking because I think he's pretty good. John, those are the hot topics on the table in the world of hockey.
Yeah, hot topics. I'll tell you this, we're traveling, so I haven't seen all the games, but I did see the highlights of the Canucks-Oilers game, and one of the players got cross-checked, like up in his neck, and was like tag teamed by another player. I mean, did you see that, Lee?
That was Connor McDavid, the star of the Edmonton Oilers. And that came after the game was over. Right at the end of the game, he got cross-checked right in the mouth. Did not get badly injured, could have been badly injured. The Vancouver defenseman, Connor Soucy, has already been fined $5,000 today and is going to hold a hearing, I think, by tomorrow. He's probably going to get suspended. The rivalry has really become bad blood. There have been a lot of heavy hits. There have been a lot of cheap shots along the way between these two teams. Both these teams are intent on crashing the crease and disrupting the goaltenders. Silovs, the Vancouver third-string goaltender, has done very well. He's been able to hold up and weather this barrage of bodies in front of him, whereas Skinner has just, I think, emotionally cratered. And Edmonton's got a big decision to make before that Game 5 tomorrow night, which is back in Vancouver. Like I say, I quoted you those statistics, and I know you're a big numbers guy. Dude, if you got a 793 goals against average in the playoffs, your team is either dead or about to become dead in postseason play.
Yeah, I mean, the NHL playoffs are terrific. I'll tell you what, Lee. I mean, here I'm in Ireland, and we're not getting NHL coverage out here, but there's people here talking about hurling and a lot of other sports.
Isn't the most shocking thing? I told John this before he got on the plane. John, when you get the Irish News, which is the big countrywide newspaper, go to the back. It's a tabloid. Go to the back. And I bet he found 5 pages of soccer stories and 2 pages of hurling stories and maybe something on darts. But you would not know that there's Major League Baseball or the NFL draft or the NBA draft or the playoffs going on. It's a uniquely different sports culture, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But, it's all good. I mean, we all love sports and it's great doing this podcast. I mean, this is kind of cool. We're doing this, around the globe. I mean, it's the world of sports legitimately.
This has been fun. And again, we hope maybe by Thursday we'll be able to do Fans Forum to give everybody an opportunity to join us. And again, our podcast brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers, 9 stores to serve you in San Diego, and by North County Eye Center of Poway and Escondido. You need help with your eyes? Think about them, North County Eye Center. And again, this is a 2-country hookup. I am in Oregon. John Riley is drinking Guinness. He's in Ireland. We're going to do this on Thursday, hopefully without taking any bullets along the way. We got through this. This was pretty impressive. Technology, John, is great until the technology is not great. Knock on wood, we got through the first show doing this 2-continent podcast.
Hey, it works, man. I mean, love Zoom or StreamYard or whatever technology you're using. This is terrific. It's 1 o'clock. We started at 1 o'clock Pacific time. Over here, it's 9 o'clock at night. And if you can see over my shoulder, it's still light outside. I think it's because we're so far north, but it's been terrific here. Looking forward to doing Thursday with you, Lee.
And we thank you for joining us. We'll see you come Thursday. Want you to share, want you to subscribe what we're doing. Tell everybody about our 2-continent broadcast. And we hope to hook up with you 1 p.m. Pacific. That's 9 p.m. Ireland time for our 2-continent podcast broadcast. John, thanks for being with us. Have yourself a great trip on your tour. We'll talk to you Thursday.
Talk to you Thursday, Lee. Looking forward to it.
And for all of us viewing us on StreamYard today, thanks for being with us on Hacksaw's Headlines.
Join us again for Hacksaw's Headlines on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And find the audio version on your favorite podcast apps. For more content, go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com.